Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This is the entirety of my painted Custodes force, the Dread host. I've got a couple of Palace light Graf tanks coming, but what you see in front of you is about 7 million points worth of Custodes, and therein lies the problem. It's a very expensive force, so fielding it on the table means you don't get a lot of models, which means as soon as you lose a quarter or as soon as you lose a half of your army, it really stings. That's one of the problems. For example, just a Virtus Praetor or a bike with Hurricane Bolters, that's 90 points right there. So you can bring 10 of them, 2 units of 5 or a couple of units of 3 and a unit of 4. You can bring 10 of them, but that'd be 900 points. That's near on half of your army right there for 10 models, and you lose half of them, you're down to 5 models. They're very expensive. Yes, they're fast. Yes, they're choppy. Yes, they've got hurricane bolts for dealing with those hordes, but very expensive. So Custodes, like most elite forces, tend to fall off a cliff once you start losing models. You really need your first turn thing. That's one of the issues with Custodes, and why they function better if you ally them with something. If you ally them with Guard, or if you ally them with a force that can bring a lot of horde, like Adeptus Mechanicus, you could ally them with, and chuck lots of Scutari in there as well, because you need your buffer. You need just redundant units that can run off and sit on an objective somewhere. And with an elite force, there is no redundancy here. You need everything in this army going forward and attacking. Now, one of the other weaknesses in the Adeptus Custodes Codex is there is no range. The only range that you really have is the Venerable Land Raider. Venerable Land Raider lost its 5-up invulnerable save when the Codex dropped because it doesn't have Aegis of the Emperor. And bringing along a Venerable Land Raider, I think it's like 320 points currently at the time of filming, after Chapter approved 2020 points adjustments. So 320 points, that gives you your only range in the decks, which is the 4 las cannons and the twin heavy bolter on the Land Raider. You can bring a couple of them, that's 600 plus points, 650 plus points on a couple of Land Raiders. And you'll notice that I haven't got them. And the reason why I haven't got them is because they're very expensive. And because Land Raiders, and also because Land Raiders, you can get them for other armies, you can get them for Space Wars, you can get them for Space Marines, you can get them for this, you can get them for that. And I wanted a Custodes force that looked unique, that looked Custodes-esque. So I've got the Claudius Graf tanks from Forge World instead. For those that don't know, Forge World is Games Workshop. That's the resin model part of Games Workshop. They all do all the Horus Heresy lines. For those that don't know, just chuck Forge World into Google, and I envy you if you're going to Forge World for the first time and seeing all the glorious toys that they have in store. But these guys come from Forge World because Land Raiders are your only long-range stacker, so you need long-range stacker in a Custodes force. If you don't have the long-range stacker and you have everything on the table, either deep striking in, for example, the Alaris Terminators can deep strike in, or you can put your Wardens in teleport from Golden Light they come and they could teleport in. You can even put your Dreadnoughts in reserve, and from Golden Light they come, they can teleport in. So you can teleport in a lot of stuff. Oh, by the way, guys, these guys come from Forge World as well, but don't get these particular type of Dreadnoughts. They're not epic in a game sense. The flamers on the sword haven't got much range. But they look really cool. The reason why I've got 2 of them is because I think they're the most glorious looking Custodes Dreadnoughts you can get. The spear version is probably better from Forge World. But yeah, you can teleport in and you can zip up with your bikes if you don't have any range. And that's your first turn. Or not even your first turn. If you're teleporting in, you'll just have your bikes and your foot troops chomping up the table. And then your opponent will have its first turn and eliminate a quarter of your army before it ever gets to do anything, or potentially more. So what you do need to add in a Custodes force is long-range stacker. And you've got the Land Raider. You can pick the Land Raider, or you can pick 3 of these guys instead. Now I picked these guys because they look cool, because I wanted just Custodes looking models, stuff that's unique for Custodes. I picked them because of the long-range stacker, and I picked them because they have the fly keyword. And so when a Land Raider gets touched, it can't shoot anymore. It's got to fall back and it can't shoot. But these guys have the fly keyword, so when they get touched, they can fall back and still shoot. And you need 3 of them because they're the only real reliable long-range stacker anti-tank weaponry that you can get for your Custodes. There are other Forge World units that you can get. The heavy bolter version of normal guys, which are troops now. There's the jumpy dudes that you can get, which are fast attack options from Forge World. There are a couple of options in the Forge World store which allow you to add some much needed variety, different ways of playing your Custodes from Forge World. So for people new to the hobby, I never recommend getting Custodes first, even though that I'd love to recommend them because they're so cool, their lore is so cool, the narrative is so cool, and the models look stunning. But they're an elite army, they're very unforgiving to play. Of course, this is my opinion. It's just an opinion, guys. I could be entirely wrong. What I'd like to see in the codex going forward, in the next version of the codex, is some rule, some core rule, a bit like a chapter tactic, which says that you can bring a detachment of Custodes and add them to any Imperial force. Narratively, that makes perfect sense to me. Custodes in the lore very rarely deploy in force on their own. They're normally attached to something. So having some rule where they can attach themselves, a detachment of these guys can attach themselves to any other Imperial force without affecting the core rule of this army and without affecting the core rules for no negative detriment to either side, that would make narrative sense to me and would help make Custodes a bit more playable. You could fill in the gaps that are missing. You could add some DACA, you could add some Imperial Guard tanks to the Custodes punch, for example. You could have Space Marines leading the charge with drop pods and flyers, for example, and have Custodes holding objectives in the backfield and daring the enemy to come and try and take them off of them. However, to be fair to Games Workshop, it was a brand new codex that was released in the 8th edition, and whenever new codexes got released, whatever edition it is, the codexes are always a bit dry, always a bit thin on the ground to start off with. I'm just pleased that we can actually field this as a viable force. Right, top 3 units, where to start? Third place, the Vexilla Praetor with the Vexilla Malefica. I've given them storm shields just in case there are any snipers out there or abilities out there that allow these guys to get targeted. But you need the Vexilla Malefica because that's a -1 to hit for any Custodes unit. It's just any Custodes unit, including tanks or land raiders or whatever you want it might bring within 6 inches of this guy. He'll be over 120 points depending on how you load him up. You can stick him in Terminator armor if you want to make him even more pricey, but there's no need to do that because you can just drop them out of the sky with From Golden Light They Come. But as this is such an elite force, you always need to bring this guy along for that magical -1 to hit every single unit within 6 inches of this guy. It really does help over the course of a game to keep a elite, low model count army alive for longer. In second place, I want to say bikes because they can hit like a brick, hitting on 2s and re-rolling to wound on the charge, but they're just so pricey. A unit of 5 of these guys zipping around all over the place brings a lot of speed, brings a lot of dagger against anti-horde. They can fall back and still shoot, but they can't fall back and charge again, which is painful, and they are pricey for what they do. They have a 4-up invulnerable save. It'd be nice if there was a strat that could raise that up to a 3-up invulnerable save if they went flat out in the first turn, for example, but there isn't. I want to say bikes. I've got a lot of bikes. Bikes are cool, but I've played many lists where I've brought a lot of these guys or a chunk of these guys and they just attract all the firepower and you've got 1 or 2 left to do the work and they're not doing the work because there's only 1 or 2 left. So in second place, I have to go with a normal Custodian Guard with sword and board. Now the spears are cooler and there's a strat that allows you +1 to wound with these guys. But sword and board, you need a sword and board guy in every single Custodian unit that you bring. So you can give your troops a 3-up invulnerable save. Add at least 1 to every troops unit that you can bring. Yes, they're not as killy as the spears, but you could add a 2 to every troops unit you bring, for example. But essentially what you're doing there is your troops option has a 3-up invulnerable save. And it's a pain to get through. I fought against Custodes, and as long as they're making those 3-up invulnerable saves, with the -1 to hit as well, it stops your scoring options, it stops your foot-based options falling off a cliff, and it can be hella annoying. I particularly remember a game with Quipster, and I was throwing loads and loads of rounds into these guys for turn after turn after turn, and I killed maybe 1 or 2 because he kept making that 3-up invuln. He kept making that 3-up invuln. In a game where it's all about AP, stripping away the armor value, having a flat 3-up invulnerable save on your troops' choices, so it doesn't matter what they're getting hit by, whether they're getting hit by AP minus 17, it doesn't matter. They've got a 3-up invuln. That's number 2. Bringing troops and having sword and board guys in your troops slot. Number 1 for me is fairly self-evident. The Shield Captain on the Dawn Eagle jet bike, and there's 2 relics that can give them a 3-up invulnerable save. The Auric Aquilus is reroll charges in a 3-up invulnerable save, and Eagle's Eye is just a flat 3-up invulnerable save, and then you can spend a strat to give them both a 3-up invulnerable save, and you're taking 2 of these guys because they're just that good. Hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, a bajillion attacks, rerolling to wound as well with a 3-up invuln and their characters that can't be targeted. These are the ultimate Smash Captains. I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary here. I think every Custodes player out there has a couple of Shield Captains zipping around on Dawn Eagle jet bikes. They're very good. Alternatively, you could have a guy on foot in the backfield with your shooty castle, but you're probably just bringing 2 Dawn Eagle jet bike captains zipping around all over the place. A quick word on the tanks. Why did they drop the strength of the weapon from 8 to 7? Yes, they were powerful. Yes, they were appearing in tournaments, but Custodes weren't winning any tournaments at any time. And losing that strength from 8 to 7 really, really hurt these guys. I'd rather they either dropped the number of shots from 8 down to 6 or 5 and kept the strength, or even increase the points cost of these, because that drop from strength 8 to strength 7 has essentially neutered these tanks. They're still better than getting a Land Raider. Strength 7, 8 shots is still better than getting those Land Raiders in, but yeah, beforehand you might have brought 1 or 2 of them to be friendly. Now you absolutely must bring 3. They look cool, they look Custodes, they should hurt more than they currently do, so maybe Games Workshop will get back round to give them that strength 8 again, or just dropping the points, because at the points value for them right now and what they do, and yeah, I'm a little bit bitter about that one, a little bit. Having said all that, Custodes can absolutely wreck face sometimes, not failing those 4-up or 3-up invulnerable saves, and then you're going to wreck face. Playing narrative games where the opponent has to attack these guys, that hurts too, because it's like stepping into a blender. Or playing those narrative games where you can add that long-range fire support or flyer support to an elite punchy part. Playing those narrative games as well, these guys can absolutely wreck face. But of course, there are times when they get absolutely wrecked themselves. They have no real psychic defense. There is a strat and there is the ignore mortal wounds on a 6. But apart from that, they can get picked apart by psychic armies, which is probably why the Sisters of Silence run around with these guys quite often in the lore. And they can kind of struggle as well attacking entrenched positions with overlapping screening units, because you've not got very many units that will be attacking that entrenched position, and you'll be digging your way through a line after line after line while you're getting shelled from behind. So while we look forward to the day when Games Workshop adds units or adds rules which gives these guys supporting firepower at range, until that day, Custodes are still really cool. Cool to play, hard to play, and they either go one way or the other. If you play with Custodes, you're not going to have very many models left at the end of the day, but you're either going to completely win or completely lose. There is no middle ground with these guys. They're so challenging to play, but it's so rewarding when you manage to pull off that big win. And that's one of the reasons why I love them, as well as the lore. So what do you guys think of my top 3 list? Have you got different ideas in your top 3 list? How do you make Custodes sing? And what do you think Games Workshop could do to add to improve upon this army? Thanks for listening. If you want any more videos from me, campaigns and tutorials and sit and talks and all sorts of stuff, please consider subscribing to deploymentzone.tv. Thank you to everyone who has chosen to do that or support me on Patreon through DZTV. Go to Patreon and type in DZTV. You'll find me there as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. Happy wargaming.